Sandy Roberson, conservative businessman, mayor of Rocky Mount. He's made a career of delivering results, meeting budgets, and holding others accountable. As our congressman, he'll go to Washington and stop Joe Biden. Sandy Roberson will defend our Second Amendment rights, finish President Trump's wall, and clean up Joe Biden's mess.
I'm Sandy Roberson, candidate for Congress, and I approve this message. Take it away, guys.
That's SR for Sandy Roberson. Make sure you vote it right.
Well, look, man, thanks for coming.
Absolutely,
I really appreciate this. It's been awesome. I want to hear really two things from you. What's going on? I want to hear about what's going on in the short session, what's going on in our legislature, particularly impacting Nash County. I know you represent both Nash and Franklin right now. Yep. That district will change going forward, but I think that was something that we'd really be interested in hearing. And the other thing that's a really big topic is housing, particularly if you're on the periphery of Raleigh. We're seeing a lot of pressure in Nash County, some in Rocky Mount, some in neighboring areas. Just what are you seeing out there in terms of availability of land and just as important, water, access to water and sewer and those kinds of infrastructure things. So if you don't mind, just kind of kick it off a little bit with some of the legislators. What's going on?
Absolutely. So, first time getting elected, running for office, and coming to my first session. And what do we have to deal with? We got to deal with the budget, which one hasn't been adopted in 4 years. I got to deal with COVID, all the COVID issues come along with it.
Right.
And then redistricting on top of it, which was, now, it was all very interesting. I mean, here I am, I'm in the middle of a long session and getting dipped in all these different issues, which, all of them had their own things to deal with.
Of course.
So, but getting through it, and it ended up being the longest session in history. So we started in January.
Is that true? I don't know that. I
realized
that.
Absolutely. Longest session in history. And
I know that Senate Bill 473 was the one thing I was watching the whole time, and the last vote of the last day going into the break. But I take you off course a little bit there. But
we'll go to that real quick.
Okay.
So what's funny is that Senator Barnes ran that bill in the Senate. That's where it started.
Right.
And for your viewers, in North Carolina, the House and the Senate can start bills, but it has to pass both chambers, and it has to pass both chambers exactly the same. So if any changes, and then you get voted again. Anyway,
and it has to be read multiple times in both chambers
three
too.
times,
so that everybody, you can't say I didn't know what that was about.
Oh yeah, that's right, 3 times. Yeah, and so she ran it in the Senate, and then and this is something really interesting I learned is that. The way you negotiate is you hold bills on each side, especially when we're working on the budget, because the Senate wants certain things, the House wants certain things, and they write it, and then we rewrite it, send it back and forth. Well, if you've got good bills like Lisa's bill 473, you know what? We want it to pass. I know you want it to pass. We're going to hold it. And so that's kind of the politics of the whole thing.
Sure.
So here we are. We're about to get out of session, and I get a phone call. And Lisa told me, a month and a half, 2 ago, said, hey, listen, I want you to run this for me on the House floor because this, you have to have a House member run it for you. I said, absolutely, I'd love to help you. And I read up on it, I had my notes, I knew everything about it, and it sat for almost a month and a half, 2 months. And then about 30 minutes we're going to House floor, they go, oh yeah, Matthew, by the way, we're going to rules, and it's going to go straight on the House floor. And I thought, oh, I got to go find my notes. This is going to be interesting. So
you are sponsoring on the floor,
exactly.
right?
And I'm just getting hammered with questions, and I'm just like, yes, that's exactly.
It's just good. Just go with it.
That's right. Why wouldn't you want to hold your local officials accountable?
Well, that's absolutely the truth. I mean, why has it not been that way? That was the question that she and I were having, and I'm like, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it is. So, and when you got the auditor, when she's behind it, she's like, listen, this has been an issue for years. We haven't had an enforcement mechanism. And the way it's always been is that there's an assumption that the voters are going to hold them accountable if they find out that information. And so that's kind of the way it's always been held. And the auditor's like, listen, really, this is an issue. This is deep corruption, and we need help, not just, in one area. She gave us several examples where she's dealt with over the years.
Right.
And so,
that is amazing because, when I got that audit, that was my first at bat, right? I got elected. I mean, I'm here maybe a month, and then all of a sudden that rolls in. I got 14 days before I had to disclose it to anybody. And so I'm kind of thinking through how we go about dealing with this. But part of that exercise for me was doing research on all the old audits that were going on. And then since then I've looked at audits. And that's what you saw over and over and over. It really came down to the jurisdiction in terms of how they dealt with the audit. Yeah. Some folks are tar and feathering people and kicking them out of office and moving forward. Others,
Yeah, it's just
whatever.
And this is North Carolina, and anything we should hold our elected officials to a higher standard.
I agree.
And so that's why when it came to me, I was like, Lisa, look, Senator Barnes, we're going to run this thing, and roll on.
Well, thank y'all for doing that. I mean, I think it set the table for transparency. I think that matters, and I think it's going to pay dividends for our state, for our local governments, for a long time going forward. But anyway, the other thing, the little side caveat of that is, I can't tell you how many newspaper articles I've gotten from people saying, well, this was written for us.
Yeah.
All these different jurisdictions. This clearly was written for us.
Yeah.
And so it tells you that it's a widespread challenge, conundrum, really.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that corruption exists under every single rock, but we've at least eliminated any temptation of it, I think.
Absolutely.
Or you have, anyway. So anyway, back to the session. Yeah.
So budget stuff. So we ran in the budget, and the budget is the biggest piece of policy document that we work on because it deals with so many areas and it deals with the funding of the state. Some interesting things for Eastern North Carolina as a whole. We put $500 million in there for flooding, and flood prevention. So you talk about, we always are after the fact. We have money set aside, so after hurricane or large storms, we always deal with what happens. But how about if we start being proactive and clean up our stormwater systems, clean out our ditches and creeks and everything else, and make sure that we have free flow of flood water so that's not getting caught up.
Well, I want to talk about that because I've had a couple conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers going back maybe even 2 years, doing studies, at least on Stony Creek and the Tar River in particular, was constantly flooding. And I think the other river basin they were really studying was the Lumber River down in Roberson County, and maybe even another river. So anyway, tell me, what's that money going to do? I mean, we've got the studies, or at least I know studies are happening. So what's that cleanup going to look like? You have any idea, a vision of that?
It's not just a cleanup. Also, is the education and also the mapping. So part of it is having solid data. So let's not build any structures inside these areas. Let's not put roads in areas that we are prone to flooding. And we've got data, and we've got our 100-year and 500-year flood zones. But what we don't know is that how is it shifting based on human interaction. So when we put in roads, if you put in a road, it creates more area for runoff, and then we also put a bridge over top of it, and then we put in crossings and pipes and those other kind of things. So it changes those things. And so does it turn a 100-year flood into a 500-year flood? And so we need very, very good mapping. And so I think, for example, $25 million of that goes to just data collection and creating solid data so that we can make wise decisions as elected officials, and also, for our government officials.
I think that's outstanding. I mean, that's going to make a big impact.
Yep. Farmers is a good example. So we want to try to reduce erosion control and keep the ditches clean and pipes clean, those kind of things. And so there's money in there for our farmers to put in there's a term for it, but grass swells, to reduce erosion and and keep the ditches out. Especially East North Carolina, we got very large canals, those kind of things, and so when they get stopped up, water backs up and causes flooding upstream. And
some saltwater incursion too when that occurs in some places like Hyde County and Terrell County and those places way east.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what else is going on in the session? Or did it go on?
Yeah, so we've got that. So let me try to think of some fun things. So directly for Nash County, I mean, I think we put $2 or $3 million for water needs for Spring Hope. We put $1.5 million for sewer needs for Middlesex. Also, there was about $1 million in there for economic development for the economic development park over there.
Sure.
We put $5 million in for Bailey for their sewer. They've had 19 years of moratorium, and for their sewer. Middlesex have been put on a moratorium from the city of Raleigh because of their I&I. I mean, and you think about it. I mean, they're dealing with systems that have been there for half a century or more.
Or more.
Or more. And so when you've got a population of 200 or 300 or 400 people, they never could borrow enough money to ever fix the systems. And so the state across all of North Carolina, the legislature said, all right, we have an opportunity to work on our infrastructure because we know it's crumbling and it's getting in bad shape. There's towns that still have I don't know, do you still have terracotta pipes in Rocky Mountain?
We sure do. We've got some culverts we're working through 100, 150 years old that are collapsing, and the question is whether to try to rebuild those or to just go around it and create another structure and flow. And it's not sexy the way to spend money, but you got to do it. And if you don't do it, you're in trouble.
Oh yeah, because then your sewer lines back up because they collapse, and
it's a real deal.
It is, yeah. So, and we've still got a lot of needs, but we took a big chunk out of our water and sewer infrastructure needs. We funded some road projects, intersection projects, things like that. Trying to trying to get that money out where it's most effective.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Oh, some policy stuff we changed. Firefighters is a good example. We talk about when we have old homes, we go in and we abate the asbestos, and then before we can tear them down. Well, firefighters don't get that opportunity. When they have a fire, and if there's asbestos in the house, they're getting exposure and secondary exposure to it, which causes cancer.
I hadn't even really considered that, but that's I mean, just because you wrapped it up with a little bit of tape, that's not helping them.
No. What we did is we changed the way that they get paid for insurance, and also a fund to help them when they get exposed to cancer, and also helps them and their families.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Some other fun stuff we had. I mean, it's all serious stuff, but some of the fun stuff, the infrastructure stuff's always fun. Highway improvements.
Well, I mean, just talking about infrastructure in particular, Rocky Mount has a lot of capacity. So as a result, we have a lot of inquiries from a lot of places. Franklin County, I think, is most recent, have called us looking for a 40-year deal. We've sold to Wilson before. And so the question is, what do you do with that finite resource?
Yeah.
You want to help. You want to see growth, but it's inhibiting growth, particularly when you have like almost a supernova that Raleigh has become in terms of development.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what you do in your private life too. You're a builder and a developer. So, what towns are kind of at capacity? I mean, you're dealing with in the Youngsville area. You're dealing in, I would assume, all that periphery of Raleigh. So, what are the challenges with creating new developments? And we need housing. We need housing stock. We're the fourth fastest growing place in the country, the union, I should say. And right now we have 79 projects as part of our Gateways partnership that would equate to $20 billion on the ground, creating in excess of 20,000 jobs. And we have no housing stock.
Yeah.
In Rocky Mount, there's no housing stock anywhere that I can tell. Nash County is fighting over that issue right now as to how much more development they want to see happen, and part of that is what's the availability of infrastructure. So, it all ties together in terms of what we want it to look like and how that plans. And so, on a personal level, as a private citizen, how is that impacting you? How do you find that site?
So I'm the chair of our EDC, Economic Development Commission.
Sure.
I've been doing that for years, and also involved in our Committee 100. I love the economic part of volunteering my time, because I think if we have a strong economy, it fixes a lot of issues. If you've got plenty of money in the bank, you can solve a lot of problems. And so,
people are a lot happier.
That's right, exactly. And if your worry is not how do I pay my bills, or how do I buy groceries or pay for gas, with now it's double the price. But we'll come
to that. That's another issue.
Yeah, but if I'm not worrying about those things, then I have free money to spend and go on vacation and buy additional things, which helps drive the economy. It's just, that's the part of it. And so we want good jobs in our area, and we're getting very good jobs. We've got some. I mean, the announcement down in Middlesex,
outstanding,
perfect. That's what we need. But when I meet with these big companies and what they're looking for areas, and small, medium, and large is all the same issue. Number one issue is not necessarily transportation is there. How quickly can we get to where we're going? Do you have water and sewer? How expensive is the land? Is the government easy to work with, or is this going to be like California, where it takes you 2 and 3 years to get a permit? But the number one thing is your workforce. What does your workforce look like? Do you have a workforce? And so that's why the housing stock is very, very important, because you have to have places for people to live, because they're going to come here. And so, like, if you're an Apple's going down into southeast Raleigh, and they're talking 1,000 to 2,000 jobs.
Right.
Well, if you take 1,000, 2,000 jobs, you have to have a housing stock for those people also. And they don't necessarily live in that one area. They're going to drive, and they're going to commute and do different things. And so if you take a place like Nash County, Franklin County, the example I've been talking for 15 years, and people are finally starting to see the vision. But if you take Atlanta back in 2000, they built Interstate 75 all the way up straight through Marietta and Ackworth, and it's about the same distance from Raleigh to, Rocky Mount's a good example, right? And so what's happened is
I've driven that before. In fact, I've done business in Atlanta. I had a home health agency in both of those towns.
Yeah, and my grandfather lived in a house with no plumbing. He just got electricity before I was born, and farmed using a plow and a mule.
Right.
Now there's $500,000 and $700,000 on his homes on his farm,
Right.
and you drive another 25 minutes past it, and it's houses, and you never even knew you left Atlanta because it all looks the same.
That's right. And Marietta to Ackworth is now about an hour and a half,
That's right,
maybe
yeah.
2 hours instead of the 45 minutes is from my house to downtown Raleigh.
That's right. It is, exactly. And so and that's the vision I try to share with people, is that what we don't want to do, we don't want to resist change. What we want to do is embrace it and say, listen, we know what's coming, and we want to guide it and lead it. So when we resist change, what happens is it normally runs us over. If we embrace it, then say, all right, listen, we know what's coming, let's prepare for it, and let's help the growth grow like we want as a community. Let's make it something that's an ally instead of something that's against us.
I think that's an excellent point, because at some level it becomes too much pressure to resist.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in that perfect storm or world right now, at least where we're living in North Carolina, and I'm happy to finally see it.
Yeah.
I grew up in the state that was Mayberry.
Yeah.
I remember Raleigh at 150,000 people or so. I mean, that just blows my mind now that you could drive there now, right?
It is. and it's perspective on a lot of things. I'll give you a good example of some of the stuff that I deal with. Is that in one part of the district, I have people that beg for cell phone towers. Matthew, we have no service, we have nothing. Can you at least talk to the providers and see if they would try to at least put one cell phone tower here, because we have big dead zones, we need help, right? And they have other parts of the county that if a cell phone provider comes in, because 5G needs more towers, you want that high-speed internet, on your phone, guess what? Boom, they put up a cell phone tower. Well, they're going, we don't want cell towers around our house. We don't want to look at them. And in the other part of the jurisdiction, they would beg, I don't care what it looks like. I don't care if it's a big silver tower.
Use my yard.
That's right. Build next to the house if you have to. So it gives you the difference in the perspective of a lot of things. And since I'm bringing it up, one of the biggest things in the budget I'm really excited about is we put $1 billion in there for broadband infrastructure.
That's outstanding.
I mean, that alone, and it also gives an opportunity for towns and counties to apply for the funds and work with the providers so they can use things, wireless internet instead of just a hardwired stuff. They can do hardwired, they can do a lot of different things with it. So it opens the opportunity for us to really start addressing the need in our rural areas for high-speed internet.
Well, and I've actually had the opportunity to invest in a couple of companies that were trying to do that. I didn't do it just because of my current position, just felt a little weird about it. But I'm delighted to see there are folks out there trying to solve that riddle.
Oh, yeah.
Working either with utility companies that also have fiber optic networks in place, working with traditional phone companies, with cellular companies, and everybody's just trying to find different ways to do it. One of the things, and you and I have talked about this in the past, Rocky Mountain not being able to, provide broadband as a utility, posed a little bit of a challenge. But we've had companies come in and say, look, we'll put in a fiber optic network, no charge to the city. We'll do 100% coverage all over the city, and we'll get it done within an 18-month period of time. And I'm like, well, that's a perfect world.
Yeah.
No capital outlay. I mean, that is just fabulous. If they deliver half of what they're promising, it'll be a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And so, it's just good to see that that's kind of happening. But when you get further east, a lot further east, that's just not an option.
No, it's and you're dealing with it. I know in your travels, the rural areas are really the ones, because at least we can see Raleigh from here.
That's right. That's right.
But the further east, just so you know, I'm from Camden County, Pasquotank County. So my wife is from Plymouth, Columbia area.
Yeah, so you're between the canals, and we spent a lot of time down in the neck of the woods.
Exactly. We know what flatland looks like, and swampland, and everything
Sure.
else. And it's a whole different process and thought of what availability looks like.
Right.
And so, although yes, it is tough for us, but as further east you go, the availability for internet gets worse and worse.
So, as I've been campaigning, I see one of the biggest potential for economic development stone, an area would be the completion of I-87. Particularly from the port in Virginia, to get it to maybe Williamston, where 17 connects with 64. It's not exactly interstate, but if you get it 4-lane divided all the way to the port, that would make a tremendous impact in terms of Pasquotank County, Camden County, Gates County, Hartford County, Washington County, and the list goes on all the way to Rocky Mount. And I'm told that you can build broadband infrastructure with a road fairly inexpensively. Has there been any thought or discussion of combining some of these state monies with some of these federal ARP monies, along with road construction? Somebody needs to get into this, so it's not just a locally not just driven by local jurisdiction, because sometimes we can be our own worst enemies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best way I can say that.
It's funny. I'm on the joint committee for capital outlay, capital. I forgot the acronym, but oversight committee.
Sure.
And so we actually had a presenter come in, and one of the things that he's a private consultant that the state hires to help with capital projects, and that was one of the ways that he's looking at by taking the ARP money and looking at federal projects, the state and local projects,
right.
And then how do we combine some of these to save some funds? Because one of the big things we're going to try to address this short session is inflation. We did all these projects, and so if you had $1 million, it's not worth $1 million more.
No,
now it's worth about
$900,000.
Yeah, I mean at best.
Right.
So where do you find them? How do you make that up? Do we change the scope of the projects? It can't be we just keep throwing more money at it.
Right.
It's got to be how are we creative with these things to start combining projects?
Yeah, well, so that's just something I keep scratching my head on. Then you start looking at some of these counties, particularly further east, they just don't have money and resources.
No.
So I mean, in many cases, it's not a lack of willingness or a lack of desire. In some cases, I just don't have enough bench strength to have the depth to be able to make these decisions and to move forward on these types of projects. And so I just didn't know if there was any consideration on at least some of those comments. So I'm glad to hear there is.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you kind of touched on it there, is that it's just the same example I had earlier where you have a county, a city that's only got 300 or 400 people.
Sure.
And they're trying to fund it, right?
Right.
Your East North Carolina counties are dealing with the same thing.
That's exactly
it's a
right.
very low population, and then even though if they've got the know-how and the willingness and the drive, that there's just not enough resources, and that's why we have to combine the resources of the state, local government, and also the federal government to try to help them.
How about most of the counties east of here have fewer people in them than the city of Rocky Mount? The whole county.
Yeah.
I mean, Edgecombe County probably is about the same population as Rocky Mount, and it gets smaller and smaller as you go east. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what other good things are happening out there that we just don't know about that we need to probably know?
Oh, I don't know. You got me off guard.
I'm
now.
sorry.
I
do know this.
Yeah.
You've got this thing coming up on the 15th. Is it the 15th, May 15th, up in the Hudson House? It's a.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I
Okay.
know that's something for you, and a lot of people always look for something to do. And
Yep.
it sounds like a great event.
So my good friend Melissa
Right.
at the Hudson Manor, she's doing what's she call it? The Days of Tomorrow or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so I'm close.
Yeah.
You get the meaning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's close enough to Google.
That's right. Yeah. And it's at the Manor, Hudson Manor, which.
Right.
By the way, my son's name is Hudson, so he loves it.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
And so they're gonna have I've got an old '77 F-150.
Right.
I'm restoring and working on a little bit of time, and hopefully my son will work with me and we can restore it together. But that's a whole other story. But they're gonna have antique vehicles there,
Right.
classic cars and trucks. They're gonna have some I can't remember what it's called, but they do tools of yesteryear kind of thing,
right,
where, using hand tools, and,
Right.
and they have different arts and crafts where people are making things. They're going to have tours. So yeah, I mean, it'll be a big event.
So is there any price to admission? And the Hudson Manor, by the way, is outside of Lewisburg.
That's
Someone
right,
needs
yeah.
to Google that and figure out exactly how to get there. I've been there a couple of times, but I sure couldn't tell you how to get there.
If we're just talking about like events and stuff, something else come up that's really neat.
Yeah.
Is the Lady Farmers tour is coming up.
Okay.
And you have to look it up through the co-op. I can't remember all the dates and times, but that's coming up here in the next week or two. And basically, it's the lady farmers throughout the area.
Okay.
And they set it up. It's on a Saturday, and you just start and you just tour around, and they'll have goods for sale on all the different farms.
I'll be daggone.
It's a great idea, isn't it?
It is a fantastic idea. I mean, it just takes that whole farmer's market, farm to table to a whole other level, and I just think it's kind of cool all the way around.
Yep.
Well, look, man, I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
This has been an outstanding opportunity to meet with you and visit with you. And I appreciate all that you've done for us in Rocky Mount, Nash County, and all you continue to do. And I hate the fact that we are losing you to our district, but nonetheless, we still consider you a friend.
You're not losing me, all right? You still
right.
got my phone number. You know where to get
That's
me.
right.
And and I'm gonna help you any way I can. I mean,
Thank you.
I know you do a good job. I know your heart's in it.
Right.
And so, when I see passionate people that really love their job and want to help the people, I don't mind sticking my time and helping out in the same way. And so it's like when your friend moves away, you still have their phone number, you still have their email address.
That's right.
And they're always friends. If
That's
you ever
right.
need them, I'm always here.
Well, for that matter, as many times we get redistricted, hey, you may be back again. Just maybe a 2-year delay. Who knows? But thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In North Carolina,
When you say you're going to do something, you do it. That's who we are down here. We're people who show up for work and get the job done.
I'm not a politician. I've spent over 3 decades in business, creating jobs, building budgets, making hard decisions. I'm Republican Mayor Sandy Roberson. I'm running for Congress and have approved this message because it's time to send someone to D.C. who knows how to get things done.
That's SR for Sandy Roberson. Make sure you vote him right.